You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast, presented by Pat's Pulpit.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. It's your boy Pat Lane, as always, with Matt St. Jean. Matt, the season's over, but football season never ends here at Pat's Pulpit. We are here for the long haul. We're here for the long haul.
Yeah, this is one of the fun things about football. The season really never stops. And with the combine and the draft, we get the playoffs, we get free agency, we get the combine, we get the draft. The lull in the season really doesn't come until months after the last game is played. The lull comes after all of that, right, when you get to like June and July. Not even July. It's like April, May, June, post draft into training camp. So we still got a lot of months here before we hit that dead spot.
Yep, exactly. So, obviously, Patriots lose to the Bills last weekend. We already talked about that game. Gave the Patriots a googly on Sunday. Again, Zoolander reference. I don't know if everyone's going to get it, but I love it. It's great. So, but we're New England. Thanks for doing that. A press release, which you never see. I mean, you just don't see that happen, and we'll talk about kind of why, speculate as to why that happened. And I think it's not really a secret as to why that happened. But, saying that they're working on negotiating a long-term deal with Gerard Mayo, and then also going to start interviewing offensive coordinator candidates, which that title, man, I cannot believe they threw that title out there.
I mean, I believe it. I think Kraft is very well aware of what the fans think of this team right now. He has been for a while. It was the comments he made last year about how long it had been since there was a playoff win. Well, tick, tick, tick. It's been another. We flipped the calendar 12 times since then. So yeah, we're right back there. And I don't think Kraft's getting older. Bill's getting older. I think the press release is almost entirely a Kraft thing here and all this stuff. But I would have to imagine Bill is also fully on board too. We all have eyes, and we've seen this football team this year, and we know what's going on. And I don't think this should come as a surprise at all, except the fact that we got the press release.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things. I think first of all, like you said, it has a ton to do with Kraft. But like you said, Bill. It's not like Bill didn't sign off on this. I think Bill signed off on it, and I think part of the reason why it's a little shot at the team. It's a little like, hey, I know this isn't how we normally do things. I know it's a little outside the norm, but this isn't how we do things either now. We haven't won a playoff game since the 2018 season when we won the Super Bowl. That's 3 straight years. Right? Yeah, 4 straight years? Jesus Christ. No, 19, 20, 21, 22. 4 straight years. Yeah. We haven't won a playoff game. Nope. 4 straight years? No shot. That can't happen. Not allowed. That's going to happen. Right. And so we're going to mix things up a little bit. Right. I know Greg Bedard he hates Belichick so much that he's laughing maniacally about it. But I think it has to do with, and of course, Kraft is saying, hey, listen, Bill, I still trust you. You're still the guy. But you got to be a little more transparent with what you're doing now. You have to, because the fans are pissed and you got to give them what they want. Right. And so I think that has a lot to do with it, because they're very, very conscious of what their image looks like. But I do think some of it's Bill saying, we're going to mix things up. We're going to shake things up a little bit, because apparently the status quo isn't good enough for people.
Yeah, and this is a company. We view it as a football team, but it is also a company. And any company that's doing things and not working out as well will shake things up, and they'll put out the press releases, and they'll do all that. And I mean, you have different standards for when things are going well versus when they're not. That's any organization, because if things are going well, you're not going to change much. And clearly that's not the case here. So I'm still not overly shocked about it. Obviously, the fact that there is a direct press release is different. I expected all of this to come probably as a leak of some sort. And I think this is also Kraft saying, "Hey, we're done with the leaks. We're going to be straightforward. We see what you see as fans, and we're going to address it."
Yep.
Again, as any business, this is it almost feels like a company saying they're putting out a product recall.
Right. No, it's true. Yeah, it's a good point. By the way, Matt, Team Crazy Matt, yes, no sleep, just football.
No sleep in the NFL. Yeah,
That's right.
I think everybody's talking about the OC part of that, but the Gerard Mayo part, I think, is just as interesting. To basically formally announce, "Hey, we like this guy. We don't want him going anywhere." Which didn't Jeff Howe then say that it's still not certain he's locked up and they're still
Right.
working the deal? And
Well, I think that's challenging. It's a challenge because you don't know, right? Now, as the Texans, I don't know if the Texans have an interview plan for him. I know the Panthers do. But I don't think that that's a realistic shot. I really think that that he deserves another shot down there in Carolina. Steve Wilkes. I just think that things went well there. The guys seem to like him. You know, this is it. Like I think he's the guy and gets another shot there because he got screwed in Arizona. But either way, it's one of those things that I think I agree with you though. It is kind of interesting. Belichick never ever does that where he's talking about a negotiation going on. They never do that. Even when it's a player, you don't hear that. Certainly not, maybe you hear something, a rumbling from a guy, a leak here and there, but you never hear it from official from the team like that. And so I think that part of that, and I do think that part of that was for Mayo because they're like, hey, not only are we serious about it, we're so serious, we're going to make a freaking announcement about it, dude. We're putting it out there to say we're working with you. And so we're going to pretty much do whatever it takes to get you here. And I do think, I don't know for sure, but I do think that means defensive coordinator. I think that you could see an assistant head coach title.
I could very easily see like linebackers coach / assistant head coach be the new title for him and some kind of official play calling duties to say he has that. Also, I want to point out this is different for Bill, but something being different for Bill is the norm for Bill. Obviously, he's kind of kept the same persona for God knows how long now, but the on-field product has always changed. The Patriot way has always been about being able to adapt to different situations and have different game plans every single week. And this is a guy, I mean, he might be older and he might be a little bit more stubborn than he used to be, but you're telling me Bill Belichick hasn't learned from his own failures in the past? He got run out of Cleveland in part because he couldn't communicate with the media there. When he came to New England, it's actually funny. If you watch his early press conferences in New England, they sound a lot different than the ones now. He was a lot more open then. And I think he learned from that when things aren't going well, you have to be more open. You have to be more transparent. And players and coaches are different now. It's a different generation. You have to treat people differently. And I also think we've seen Bill do that. He treats players differently in 2022 than he did in 2002. As he should. So the fact that he's treating a situation like this differently again shouldn't come as a shock.
Right. No, and you're totally right about that. And so we'll see what ends up happening. I am interested to see who comes in as offensive coordinator. But I do think there are some intriguing names out there, which I know we're going to get to in a second. The Mayo thing is interesting because we're talking about this off air. He and Steve Belichick, of course, have been running this defense for the last few years. And then the question is kind of, who gets more credit, right? And who is this guy and who is that guy? In my opinion now, I do think they're going to draw a line in the sand that kind of puts Mayo above Steve Belichick. And I don't think it's going to be super far above Steve Belichick, but I do think that they're going to make it pretty clear that he is, quote unquote, the next guy up in line, right? That's kind of what I think they're going to do. And whether that's the defense coordinator role, whether that's assistant head coach role, whatever that might be, I do think that they're going to make it clear that, that Steve Belichick is below Gerard Mayo. And I do think, Belichick's at a disadvantage here. Steve Belichick's at a disadvantage here because no matter what he does, they're always going to say it's nepotism, right? They're always going to say, he's only here because his dad's the coach. Like it doesn't matter how good of a coach he is. He's only here because Bill Belichick is here. And so we won't really get to see what Steve Belichick has, and we won't get a fair shot at seeing what Steve Belichick has until Bill Belichick retires, I think, because he's never going to name him defensive coordinator unless Mayo leaves for a head coaching job before Bill leaves. And you're not really truly going to see that, right? Everyone's always going to say, he's only here because, his dad's here. And so I think it's going to take a few years until after Bill leaves the NFL to really kind of see what that's going to look like for him. So I am interested to see what that looks like. But I do think that they're going to draw a pretty clear line in the sand that Mayo is going to be above Steve Belichick.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing to navigate because it may also not come with a whole lot of day-to-day change for either one of those
Right.
people in their interactions with the defense. It's all about the title and gearing up. Um, Honestly, at the end of the day, it's probably gearing up both of these guys for head coaching opportunities some point down the line. They're both gonna get a shot for it with how well they've done with this defense right now. And that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So either you got to gear them both up for it. I'm assuming Steve Belichick leaves at some point because that would make the most sense for him career wise to get out from under Bill, and then Gerard maybe becomes head coach. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, that's long term. We don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen between now and then. I don't think this means Gerard Mayo is like the anointed future head coach of the Patriots either. I think what this says is Robert Kraft knows this guy's pretty good at what he does, and we trust him and we like him. He's already in house. We're gonna make sure that he doesn't leave. Which I think another part of this that's interesting, and I was thinking about this, like the whole not naming a coordinator thing has been in part, I think, because there's language in contracts where they can get away with paying less money to guys.
Right.
This seems to me like Robert Kraft saying, "I'm willing to spend. Let's do it." Because he's saying, "I want an offensive coordinator. I don't care if it comes with offset language. Like I'm going to pay offensive coordinator prices for that." He's probably going to pay defensive coordinator prices or higher to keep Gerard Mayo,
Mm-hmm.
even if he doesn't have that title. He's saying, "I want to win. I'm older. I'm not around that much longer. I want to spend so I can get another Super Bowl ring out of
Right.
this thing." And if that's the case here, I think we're going to see that in 2 months when free agency starts. I think
Yeah.
we'll see a similar approach there where Kraft's going to say, "Hey, pocketbooks open, checkbooks open. Reach
Yep.
in, grab as many checks as you want, and have a party."
I love it.
Hopefully, it results with better things than the last one. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, and it's hard to kind of know, but I will say, you look at that 2021 off season and what they brought in, and, there were some hits, there were some misses for sure. There were some big misses, but you bring in Matthew Judon, you bring in Devon Godshaw, which I think was a good signing. You bring in, Hunter Henry, which I still think was a good signing. You bring in
he
Kendrick
made you
Bourne, you know what I
better.
mean? Right, right. And
Yeah.
so, so I do think that overall you did a nice job bringing in some talent. Now you kind of need some of that top end talent. You need some of those guys that, like a Matthew Judon, you got to get 2 or 3 of those guys instead of just one of them, right? And so I think that's going to be vital for the Patriots. And I do think there's ways for them to cut even more cap space. Trent Brown's a guy that is, $10.5 million or $11 million on the cap next year, $1.5 million dead money. Peace out, Trent Brown. See you later, buddy.
Yeah, if you feel good about your tackle situation, you think you have guys, you can cut him without having to worry. Jonnu Smith is cuttable at a certain point. Hunter Henry is cuttable if you want to completely reset this tight end room. Jalen Mills is a guy you can move on from if you want to. Kendrick Bourne is a guy you can move on from if you want to. And they already have a lot of cap space there. They'll have to. The problem is that they're going to have holes to fill.
Right.
They already have holes to fill with wide receiver 1 and corner 1 walking out the door. And if you cut guys, that's more spots. And obviously Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, their status up in the air. And if you cut Trent Brown, you're looking for a left tackle. So these are all expensive positions we're trying to fill. So it's kind of a catch-22.
But to me, it's not worth it. Like I'm not paying the $11 million for Trent Brown to get what we got this year. What are we doing? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that they paid for Isaiah Wynn this year because they figured $10 million for a starting left tackle in the NFL isn't that much money. And then they found out that Isaiah Wynn can't stay healthy, and when he's on the field wasn't that good anyways. And so it's like, okay, yeah, Trent Brown, $11 million against the cap. That's not that bad for a left tackle. But if your left tackle sucks, then your offensive line isn't very good, right? And so it's almost like, why are we, okay, fine. It's cheap for him, and we may have to go out and pay more for someone else. But if he's not good enough to get it done, why the hell are we paying him in the first place,
Yeah, it becomes tough because it's like if Trent Brown's your worst lineman, I think you can be all right with that. You can make it work.
Yep.
But right now, you're asking him to essentially be your best lineman. Which the other part of this, we're seeing new offensive coordinator. Maybe Matt Patricia just becomes the full-time offensive line coach. He's better if that's all he does. Or
Yeah.
you're looking at a new offensive line coach, which I think would be beneficial to some of those guys. And
Hmm.
they also might look at this and say, hey, we think we can get some of this value because a starting left tackle can cost like $20 million. So they might think, all right, we can get the
Right.
value of Trent Brown with a better coach. And
Yep.
I
True.
mean, it's also the special teams that they didn't mention special teams or anything else. So I assume we're going to see more coaching shakeups come
That's gonna
from
happen.
this. And this is just the headline because I can't imagine. I started watching the film from the Sunday game.
Yeah.
The first 2 plays of the game are special teams because it's a kickoff both ways, and it's just awful
Yeah.
all around. And it's like it was 2 guys in the first one. Which side note, they did miss a hold on that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But Jabril Peppers entirely in the wrong position. Pierre Strong could not set an edge, and the next kickoff, both of those guys had been pulled.
Right. Right. And then Miles Bryant's in the hole. And, of course,
Which
misses the
he actually
tackle.
made. I went back. It's funny because he actually made a really nice tackle in a similar position earlier in the game. When I was watching it, I was like, "This feels like foreshadowing."
Yeah. It's just so frustrating to see that. And again, sometimes you scheme, and I don't know if it was schemed up correctly because you really don't want a one-on-one matchup with one of your defenders against the kick returner because chances are you're going to lose that matchup maybe not 9 times out of 10, but your returner's got to beat one guy. And Miles Bryant's that one guy. If it's blocked perfectly, he's got to beat one guy. And in that case, he did. And so it's like,
Somebody else missed the tackle too on that second kickoff return before
right.
he even got through to Miles Bryant. And it's like
Yeah.
Miles Bryant should not be the last line of defense on anything on special teams. He does
Right.
not have the athletic traits to do that.
By the way,
But the fact
people.
that
No, go ahead.
the fact that you have to put him out there says a lot about who the other options are right now. And
Right.
I mean, you're seeing, like, I really like Jabril Peppers and guys like Raekwon McMillan and DeMarcus Mitchell, but I saw all of them making pretty bad mistakes on special teams. And that's kind of how they're getting onto the roster right now. So don't be shocked to see some of those guys not come back. But I think you also would hope with better coaching, you don't see some of those errors.
Right. I agree. I do agree. By the way, some people getting on the Miles Bryant train. Annie Agar, who's like a big, huge like TikTok personality or whatever, she does like a recap every week or whatever, and she took a shot at Miles Bryant this week, and I'm like, let's go! People jumping on the Miles Bryant hate train. So
Yeah. I do feel bad for him in the sense that this is the second year now they've had in a row they've had to go up to Buffalo with
right.
down corners. Now he's
Yeah.
the guy in the limelight. He was not made for that. He is a depth player.
No, and he is, and that's one of those things where it's like I know he's a depth player, and I know he can do things, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see him here again next year, just because Belichick loves guys like that are depth pieces and like keep showing up and keep working hard, even though like they eat a ton of crap all week long. But at the same time, I'm like, bro, like, can we just move on? Like, let's just move on from this guy, please. Like, I've seen enough.
Yeah, I was shocked to turn on the tape and see so far, as far as I've gotten into it, like as many mistakes from Jabril Peppers out there as Miles Bryant, as a guy who is a free agent and maybe now not coming back to New England after that performance. Because at least Miles Bryant, you can say, oh, he's a depth guy. He doesn't have the athleticism. Jabril Peppers has all of the athleticism in the world to do stuff, and he's still making some dumb mistakes out there. So I don't know.
It's tough. Did he play? Did he play in that Thursday night game against the Bills the first time? I don't know if he did or not.
He did.
And he might have.
I don't even.
I just think it's such a different animal when you play in the Bills. It's such a different animal, and it screws up your defense, to be honest with you. And I love the way he played all year long, and so I wouldn't really want one game to kind of shape whether he comes back or not. But again, the hard thing about Peppers is I like him a lot, and I like the way he plays. I don't know if you can bring him back to be a starting safety. I think you bring him back to be a depth safety or to be like the third safety on the team. But I'm not comfortable if he's your starting safety. You know what I mean? I like him. I like the way he plays.
If Devin McCourty ends up retiring here and that's it for him, I think Jabril Peppers is not the answer.
Correct.
You get somebody else to be your free safety. Miles Bryant is also absolutely not the answer to that.
All right, sir. Oh, Jalen Mills. Throw Jalen Mills back there. I'm like, shut up. No, we will not throw Jalen Mills back there.
Jalen Mills was actually not bad as a safety in Philly. He was better there as a safety than a corner.
Yes. Well, listen, McCourty did it. Maybe Mills can do it too. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Bill could prove me wrong.
I think I would rather invest in a safety.
Agreed.
With this, I think it's a pretty good year for safeties in the draft too. I haven't started scouting them, but
yeah,
It seems
Yeah,
like that feels like the type of pick where we're going to go into the draft being like, all right, we can't wait to get that tight end or that offensive tackle, and Bill's going to draft the safety in the first. And we're going to be like, what just happened? And then
yeah.
he'll end up being pretty good. And
After
he'll be the
trading,
Devin McCourty replacement for the next decade.
right?
But
After trading back, hopefully. Um,
yeah,
Brady
do we want to go ahead?
Brady mentioned this. I just thought the perfect amount of interceding by Kraft while still letting Bill keep the reins. Patriot should be excited tonight, and I agree with him. Like that's
Yeah.
to me, Kraft had to intercede at some point and had to do some things. And if this is what it is, then I think that we should be happy with that. You know, he's not jumping into football decisions, but he's like, hey, you need to be more open and honest. And again, as we said, Bill might have a big part to do about that as well. But still, I do like that. You know.
Yeah, and it's was it Mike Giardi who reported it the other day? Somebody reported that basically the meeting that we'd all been waiting for already happened, and they came at basically they went into the meeting with the same opinions anyway, which I don't think should be a shock. Like Bill watched the same team we watched all year, and they probably went in there, and the fact that there's a press release tells me they're probably pretty aligned because I don't see a situation where Kraft says, "No, I'm telling you what you're doing here, and you're gonna like it," and
Yeah, I agree.
Bill sticks around given his history. So
Yeah,
that tells me they were very much on the same page, and Bill was probably already going to be doing all of this stuff. And Kraft was like, "Hey, I want to put out a press release to let the fans know." And Bill's like, "I gotta get it. Go for it."
yeah, agreed. Team Crazy Matt does point out that Mills may have been one of the most bottom ranked PFF corners in 2022, and he didn't play a ton in 2022. He was hurt a decent amount, but I wouldn't mind the shift to safety. I mean, that's what Devin did, and Devin was obviously a lot younger than Jalen Mills is right now, but still, you know, I wouldn't hate it. So,
And
also
with the
cancel
Patriots,
cancel Boston sports. Just cancel it. Freaking Bruins lost at home for the first time in regulation this year. That's it.
blow up the
32-5-4. Team sucks. Like just cancel it. That's it. Just be done.
Yeah. No, I think with Mills and some of the stuff the defense does in New England too, they like shift things a lot and rotate things, and they have
Right.
a lot of people play safety at different points. Like we've seen, like Miles Bryant has played free safety for the team
Yeah.
this year
True.
on plays, and it's totally fine when it's a couple plays at a time. So like Mills is at the very worst like a rotational corner who you can ask to do safety stuff for a quarter or a third of the snaps in a game, and he'll be totally fine at it.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. So we'll see. All right, who's on your short list for OC? Well, who are the guys? If you had to give me, let's say
Well,
3 or 4.
Well, Bill O'Brien's going to be at the top here. He's not the sexiest option, but he's really proven at what he does. He knows what Bill likes to do very, very well. He has a history as a quarterback coach too, which I think is good for Mac and or Zappy below him, depending on how things
Right.
look going into the future.
Yep.
And I like that. I don't have. I'm not sold on Cliff Kingsbury at all. I never thought he deserved to be an NFL head coach from what he did in college. I don't think he's shown much. I think he'd be good. I think I'd be interested in him as a quarterback coach. I'd be interested in him as like a pass game coordinator if they're looking to do that type of thing. I'm not like he didn't run the ball in college. I'm not sold on that stuff. I'm not sold on him being able to vary it the way it needs to be. What I would point to here, just in general, a couple like staffs where I'd be looking at. So Alabama, obviously Bill O'Brien and anybody else under him that could be interested.
Right.
I'd be looking at Michigan football right now because of the success the Wolverines have had rushing the football, and the fact that Jim Harbaugh may be looking to get out there right now. He's taking interviews.
Yep.
So the guys under him may be very willing to go right now. And like Onwenu is already familiar with them, and they've drafted from Michigan and done pretty well with it. I know Bill has a relationship with Jim Harbaugh. So really, any of the offensive play callers or offensive line coaches from that staff, even if they're not OC, to come in as positional coaches, I'd look there. I would look at the Rams right now. If they want to do the zone running stuff, apparently McVay had given the blessing for coaches to go look for jobs elsewhere. So I'd look at literally anybody on that Rams staff that wants to go. And if they want an interview, give them an interview and see what they say and see if they'd be beneficial to the team. And I know like the Eagles quarterback coach this year is on a lot of short lists. That intrigues me with what he's done with Jalen Hurts. And The Athletic did a podcast this week talking about coaching candidates, and all of the Eagles coaches, their methodology is very interesting to me and something I think Bill would also really like. And I'd also throw in anybody from the Niners staff that could be looking for anything.
Yeah.
With the zone running connection, again, if they want to do that, if that report is correct from last year, and it's something they want to continue to do next season, I would look at guys there. You got to look at positional coaches and see who could be promoted to a coordinator from there. Because you can't look at other. This is the difficulty. All the stuff right now is looking at who could be a head coach. You got to go one level deeper looking for an OC.
Well, and that's it, right? Is that, ultimately you're looking for an offensive coordinator, and you don't need a head coach. That's why Bill O'Brien, he's still a good offensive coordinator. He is, right? And so he may not be a great head coach, and that's okay. And maybe he learned from his time in Houston and will be a better offensive coach, a better head coach if he gets another opportunity. But you don't care about that. You care about an offensive coach. Bill O'Brien knows the system, knows Belichick very well, can come in and run something similar to what they did last year. The hard thing is this. You're going into the third year with your rookie quarterback, right? You got a new quarterback, third year. It's going to be his third offensive coach, right? His third play caller in 3 years. That's a lot. And so you did what he and others in the offense said was basically changing the offense completely last year. You don't want to do the same thing again this year. You don't want to look at it and say, okay, that sucked. We're scrapping that offense and running. Now he's going to have to learn another offense. So now he's been 3 years in the NFL and he's learning 3 different offenses. That's a terrible idea and a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
right.
Which is, I mean, that's why at the start of the year, like that is the one reason in this whole thing where I was never at 100%. We have to fire Matt Patricia and redo everything, because changing your play caller every single year is how you ruin a quarterback in a lot of these situations. Right. And it means you have to nail this hire. If you mess this hire up, you're gonna basically reset everything, and that sends us into a very different timeline there. You mess this up, then Bill might end up retiring because he's not going to stick around for another rebuild. And that's a timeline I don't even want to think about at the moment.
Bill is not retiring until he breaks Don Shula's record. He's not doing it.
Yeah.
He's not doing it.
But if this team ends up looking like it's going to be a 4-win team for the foreseeable future, and he's got to stick around for another decade to see this through, he might say, I'm not getting it.
This ain't going to be a 4-win team, though. It's not. So, Charlie, though, points out a good point. Trey Nixon's back. Trey Nixon's back on a futures deal, so so we're all right. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, Lynn Bowden not back. Very sad to see.
Yeah,
somebody else on that list. Oh, Bill Murray didn't get a futures contract.
Yeah, which I was surprised about, since he did make the flip to offensive guard as well this year. I figured, but
must just not have stuck.
Yeah,
there.
Yeah,
which is a bummer. But just for the name alone, I liked him. But
agreed.
He was in college. He was a good field goal block guy. I think he blocked 2 or 3 field goals when he was in college. So I was hoping he was going to carve out a role on special teams.
It's tough though. I mean, Sam Roberts had 5 of them, and he couldn't even get on the. He couldn't get any. It's tough when you play in. Where did Bill Murray go? William and Mary, I think, or something like that. So it's like
Groundhog College.
Right, exactly. So you know what I mean. So, but I will say, and so this is Team Crazy Matt talks about, field flipping plays with offensive plays of 50+ yards. And he's saying since 2020, there have been 450 such plays. The Patriots have 4. Not great. That's 1 out of 112. Actually, 1 out of 12.5 if you're not a math guy. But I look at this and I just think, to me, the hard thing is that Mac is limited with his throwing ability as far as throwing the ball down the field. Now we can talk about arm strength and everything else, and I know we were talking about off camera, is Bill actually is Bill sold that Mac is the guy, right? Mac is never going to be Josh Allen. He's never going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's never going to be Justin Herbert. He's not that guy. He's not. And so do you need that guy is the question. Now what's interesting about it is that they drafted a very similar guy to him last year in Bailey Zappi, who you could argue has worse arm talent than Mac Jones. And so maybe they don't care about that. Or maybe
you could put Jimmy Garoppolo into that conversation too when they drafted him.
Yep. And so maybe they think, well, you can teach a little bit of arm strength. Brady didn't have the strongest arm either. And so, we got him on his diet and working out and everything, and his arm strength improved enough. But Josh Allen, those 2 throws this week, right? The one to Diggs and the one to John Brown. It's just there's a handful of guys.
Is ridiculous.
The one to Diggs was insane. There's a handful of guys, and maybe not even a handful of guys in the NFL that can make that throw.
There's 2.
But right, and the
maybe
hard
3.
Right, and that's the thing. The hard part about it is that okay, there's 3 guys in the NFL right now that can do that. Are you going to wait for the next guy that can do that? I don't think so. Like now, I think the smartest thing to do would be continue doing what they've done, which is taking late round quarterbacks or mid to late round quarterbacks and see if one sticks. And in the meantime, roll with Mac Jones, right? And I don't know. I'm not sure what that comes into, and we'll talk. I mean, I don't even want to get down in the weeds about Lamar and everything else. We could talk for hours about that, but we'll save that for another show. But it is interesting to think about, like, how can they build those big plays? And I think part of that comes with offensive speed. And I think you saw a commitment last year from the Patriots to do that. Tyquan Thornton comes in,
Yep.
Marcus Jones comes in, Pierre Strong comes in. All guys that are super athletic and super fast. That's how you build those things in.
Even
And
Cole
so,
Strange. Cole
yep,
Strange was the top of the line athlete for his position. They're
right,
they're getting it everywhere, which I think they've always valued athleticism. But I think I I came away from that press conference on Sunday kind of thinking that Bill may have been a little bit shell shocked at this
right,
point by what he's seen from Josh Allen, and he's thinking, "Oof, you either got to have a guy who can do that, or a guy who can stop that, or
right,
you're going to have an automatic 2 losses.
yep,
You're starting the year with 2 losses every year for the foreseeable future. So
right,
got to figure that out somehow."
yeah, yeah. And I will say, like, I think that they're close to stopping the Bills at points, but
Yeah.
they're not there yet, right? They just can't compete.
Yeah.
They don't have enough talent,
That's why
right? And so,
that's why yeah, I think that's why I felt a lot better. Like it's weird to say this, but I almost feel better after this year's loss in Buffalo to end the
yeah,
season than last year's loss in Buffalo to end the season, because last year we saw a defense that was pretty good go up against an offense and not force a stop the entire game, not force a punt and just get railroaded. This year, the defense that was basically statistically as good went up there and adjusted and played much better. The offense played its best game, and I think we saw in that game that the talent across the board isn't a massive, massive issue at this point. It's
right,
missing at key spots. They need some elite players, which are the hardest ones to get. But the base team, I think, was better apart from the severe coaching issues. And
right.
you fix that, then you're not terribly far off from where Buffalo is.
Yep, I agree.
And
And
that's
that's
even with Trent Brown at left tackle and Miles Bryant in the slot.
right, right. And Connor McDermott at right tackle, right? Who I think
Yeah.
to me, Connor McDermott has earned a spot on this team as the swing. I don't know if I want him starting next year, but he's certainly earned a spot as a swing tackle. And maybe if he's fighting for a job in camp, a starting job in camp, I got no problem with that. He played his ass off, I thought, this year. So,
You bring him in.
yep,
And it's if I were the one doing the drafting here, I'm trying to draft 2 tackles with my first 4 picks. One,
yeah,
hopefully, who can start this year, and one who you could start with a year under his belt the year after, and you hope you can get by with Trent Brown next year,
right,
and or somebody outplays him, but you go with Trent Brown and the other guy, and you hope that the year after, when Brown's contract is up, the other guy's ready to go.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So we'll see. I mean, look, there's a long way to go. The off season is very long.
Yes,
We're not even in the playoffs yet, and we're going to talk about
don't
the
have a
playoffs
week
in a
into the
minute. But
offseason.
But we are literally 7 days, 6 days, or not even 4 days into the offseason. So there's a long way to go. We don't even know what the coaching staff's going to look like. I do think you mentioned special teams. I think, Joe Judge is an easy candidate for a special teams coach. It just makes
If
sense
he
to me.
wants it. I can see a
Right.
world where he's like, "I don't wanna go back to that." Uh, I
Yeah, but
think Troy Brown used to be the special teams. He I think still is a punt returner coach in there.
right, right. Yeah.
So maybe
I
they
think
just move
I'd
him
like
over to
to,
special teams full time. I don't know.
yeah, I don't want to see him at wide receiver coach anymore. I think he's done okay, but not good enough as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's for some of these like I'm okay with keeping some of these offensive coaches. I just wanna see some change that isn't just the offensive coordinator, because I think the issues went deeper than that,
Right.
and
Right.
again, if Bill sees that this is already an issue, I suspect he's not gonna just stop with the top level guys. And I don't think they're
Correct.
gonna clean house. I don't think they need to clean house, but you'll see some turnover here.
Right. I agree. And and someone mentioned like about not firing people and I don't have a problem with that. You don't want to clean house and fire everyone, that's fine. Move people around, shuffle them here and there, make okay, Nick Caley, we're not happy with what you've done at tight ends coach. So we're going to give you an assistant tight ends coach. And he's really going to kind of be like the actual tight ends coach or the co tight ends coach, but he's going to be the assistant tight ends coach because we don't think you're doing a good enough job. And if it doesn't improve next year, nope, sorry, you're on your way out. You know what I mean? And so that,
Caley's such an interesting figure because they denied him
yeah,
interviews for coaching opportunities, but didn't give him any looks at play caller.
very bizarre.
And tight ends coaches don't do much. Because when the tight ends are doing pass drills, they're with the receivers coach. When they're doing blocking drills, they're with the offensive line coach. Tight end
Right.
coach is usually somebody who ends up working up to an offensive coordinator position. That's what Brian Dable did in New England,
Yep.
and ended up becoming an OC somewhere else. So the fact that Nick Caley couldn't do that in New England is I just don't know how to read their usage of him.
Yeah, it's strange. It's a bizarre situation. So,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I am intrigued to see, and I do think they're going to be aggressive. I do think that they're going to be aggressive, right? In pursuing some of these offensive coaches.
Yeah, and in general, I think one note about Bill is he gets the people see him as a conservative coach, and in a lot of ways on the field he is, but he spends to the cap every single year. He tries to max out his roster every year. Even in 2020, when it was annoying people were saying we need to tank. No, he's like, no, we're going to try to win as many games as possible. We want to keep the culture going. We want to keep a winning culture. We want to bring players in, and we're not going to lay down on anything. And I mean, that's who he has always been. The fact that they haven't spent in recent years was because they pushed everything back during the Brady era to fit as much under the cap as possible to max out Brady. 2020 is when they had to pay the debts of that, which is why they couldn't even bring Brady back really if they wanted to. And then you finally spend, and they spent to the cap, and that limited what they could do this past offseason. So this is, in some ways, this is going to be just the second offseason since Brady left that they're actually going to have an opportunity to acquire veteran players that aren't through the trade market.
Yeah. And it's going to be awfully fascinating to see what happens. And I'm very excited to see it. And I think Bill, again, it's the aggressiveness and the fact that Bill and Kraft are both on the same page where this isn't a rebuild. It's not a soft rebuild. We're close. We're there, right? I mean, we've talked about it on the show a million times. Like there's 4-5 games this season that one or two plays go the other way and they win those games. And unfortunately, they're missing guys that can make those plays to put them over that edge, right? And so they're a few players away from a 10-win team, right? And that,
yeah. And I think it's also worth noting when we talk about this stuff that not all of this improvement has to come from outside the building either. Player development is a real thing. Tyquan Thornton, I thought he was exceptional at some point against the Bills. The team's first touchdown drive, he drew one holding penalty on Tre'Davious White, of all people, who could not cover him, and then should have drawn another holding penalty later in the drive. Were both catches by Devontae Parker, so it didn't end up mattering, but he's a guy, if he takes the next step, that's huge. Cole Strange takes another step. That's huge. Pierre Strong is a guy who could be a home run hitter as a runner. These can get some of those big plays we're looking for, but you don't have to pay extra money to do it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. And I think Thornton's an interesting case because Thornton needs to put on weight. Everyone knew that coming in, that he needed to put on weight. And I wonder if he puts on 15, 20 pounds over the offseason.
I think that's too much.
Too much. If he puts on 10 pounds over the offseason, right? Number one, what does that do to his speed? And number two, is he more bulked up, and able to play more effectively, in the NFL? And I think he can. And look, he's always going to be compared to George Pickens. And I think rightfully so. I wanted the Patriots to draft George Pickens at 29, and they traded up to 50, and they had a shot at him again, and they didn't take him, and it pissed me off, and I don't like it.
They didn't want him. Tyquan's the guy they wanted.
Clearly.
So this is again one of those where it's Tyquan. Like, I think Tyquan can be like a T. Higgins level receiver. I think he can be that kind of guy who's a real high-end number two. And honestly, I don't know if he needs to put on weight to do it, because part of his game is that agility and the speed.
Right.
So I don't know. You either got to go through guys, or you got to go around them. So either put on the weight and go through them, or stay nimble and find out ways to go around them. I don't care which, but get the job done.
Well, I think you saw Devontae Smith this year. Didn't put on a ton of weight, but he put on a little bit more weight. Maybe it's only 5 pounds. Maybe it's only 5 pounds, right? But you're doing something. You get more of that play strength, and then you're ready to go in his second year. Now, Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner. Like, it's a little bit different, obviously, but nevertheless, you give yourself a little bit more durability and a little bit more of that play strength, and I think that'd be beneficial for him.
Taekwon was like a surprisingly effective blocker in college too, despite how thin he is, because he's got
Yeah,
such long arms that he can
sure.
like, I don't know, blocking is about angles and geometry here too, and physics. So it's just like he can make angles work for him. So
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see. Cole Strange said he wanted to put on weight too. He said he had trouble like keeping weight on during the season. So I wonder if a year here with the pro team
Yeah.
will help.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. So, all right, enough about the Patriots. Let's get into the Let's get into the playoff preview this weekend, which of course does not involve the Patriots, but there are still some good games, and I'm very intrigued about this week. I've used the word intrigued way too much this episode, but I'm interested to see kind of what happens this weekend. Of course, we got 2 games on Saturday, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco against Seattle and Jacksonville against the Chargers. And then on Sunday, we have Miami and Buffalo, the Giants in Minnesota, Baltimore in Cincinnati. And then Monday night, we have Dallas and Tampa Bay. Tom Brady has never lost to Dallas in his career. So I think that one's kind of the one that everyone's kind of circling. What's the one that you, outside of the, because we'll talk about the Brady game, but outside of the Brady game, what's the one that you're most excited to watch this weekend?
Let me think about this. See, what it should be is the Chargers Jaguars game, because you got the two young quarterbacks, but it isn't for me because like neither of those teams is good at attacking deep, and I have a strange feeling that game is going to end up being like a whole bunch of field goals and first to like 16 wins because the teams have good quarterbacks and no receivers who can stretch the field.
Right.
So the whole thing is going to be like 10, 15-yard plays at a time and just real short stuff. So I kind of look at that Giants-Vikings game. I don't know if either team has a chance at winning the Super Bowl, but weird stuff happens when the Vikings play this year. I think that's just going to be a fun game to watch.
I like it. I like that. That's an outside the box thinking there. I like that a lot. I'm very excited for the Chargers to show up on Saturday night without Mike Williams and just be like, Brandon Staley, you freaking meathead for playing
What
your
was he
players in a
doing?
game that didn't matter. And, once again, proving my point that Brandon Staley is a bad coach. And, I love it. I'm very excited about that. I like that Giants game a lot as well. It's hard to pick the Miami or Baltimore game because both of those teams are playing with backup quarterbacks.
Skylar Thompson season, baby.
And so, right, the Dolphins have a third string quarterback, for God's sake.
You can't. We know all the issues with the Patriots. You can't convince me that given the current states of teams in the NFL, the Patriots aren't one of the 14 best teams. Like, the Patriots are better than Miami and Baltimore now in their current states. I'd rather put Detroit and New England in there. And
100%. Yeah,
100%. Pittsburgh and New England. I want to see
Definitely
Detroit in the playoffs anyway.
Oh, I want Detroit in the playoffs so bad. But I'm going to pick that Saturday night game because I am interested to see that game. I do think you could be right? That you certainly could have a slog. The problem is I want to pick Seattle, San Fran. I want to pick that game. But San Fran is just going to absolutely wipe the floor with Seattle. Seattle doesn't have the defense to compete with them.
Do we want to make picks?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, why not?
Because I have things to say about this game. I'm very intrigued about this game.
The Seattle San Fran game?
So, have you seen the weather forecast for Saturday?
Oh, like pouring rain?
Pouring rain and wind.
Oof.
And all I could Brock Purdy has done very well. He's also he got picked where he did in the draft for a reason. He has his issues. He hasn't played a good defense yet. The Seahawks obviously aren't that good of a defense either. But he's seen him for the second time. I feel like he's due for an implosion at some point, and it's going to be an awful weather. Like if there's I don't know, the Vikings upset and anything in the Tampa Dallas game have gotten so much attention that I look at this Seattle San Fran game and I'm like, this is a San Fran team that's good, but with a rookie last pick in the draft at quarterback playing a divisional team that's very familiar with them in bad conditions.
Okay, I like it. I'm going Seattle. I'm going Seattle, and I'm going San Francisco, and I'll give you the 10 freaking points. I don't care. I don't care. San Fran is gonna absolutely destroy them. Pete Carroll said this week, unfortunately, we have to play San Fran. Are you kidding me, Pete Carroll? You're gonna say unfortunately? Get out of here.
No. Well, they're a good team. That's why he's saying it.
I realize that, but you should have a good team too. You're in the playoffs, and Geno Smith. I mean, He just doesn't have it. I'm sorry. Like, I like Geno Smith. It's a great story. He's definitely comeback player of the year. But like, I don't know. I just, I don't know. I
Here's the,
can't.
I don't think Seattle is better than San Francisco, but I think there's a shot the playing field gets leveled enough here. I mean, I'm just rooting. It's the playoffs. I'm rooting for weird stuff to happen anyway. There's always one of those games there
No,
that
you're right.
nobody sees coming.
That's a good point.
And if there's going to be one, I feel like it's got to be this because they're familiar with each other, like I said, and I don't know, like this feels like the type of game where like, all right, Seattle gets the ball first. They score a touchdown on the opening drive, like they do something with it. Then Purdy goes out there and he throws a pick six in the bad conditions. And
Oh,
suddenly
baby.
San Fran's playing down 14-0 from the get-go with that guy. And Tariq Woolen's on Seattle. Like he's not bad. He gets his interceptions. And
Okay. All right. Hey, listen, I hear
I'm
it.
taking Seattle. I
All
also
right.
have an ulterior motive here in that I also have Minnesota and Tampa winning because I really want to see an NFC championship game that has to involve either the Bucks or the Vikings after how awful they've been at stretches. That's really funny to me.
All right. So Seattle, Minnesota, and Tampa Bay. I like that.
Yeah.
Wait, who do you want hosting a playoff game?
It's not hosting, but if Seattle wins, then that opens up. So then Seattle would go to play Philly
Oh, the Eagles.
in the divisional round, which means
Right.
whoever the other teams are will play against each other. And the Vikings being what the Vikings have been this year, all over the place. Like people don't like the Vikings right now because of the one score game
Right.
thing. And also the Buccaneers have been a bad team this year. And the fact that those two teams could play each other in the divisional round and one is guaranteed to be in the conference championship
That's a great point.
it's hilarious. And
I
then
like that.
there's this area here where it's like, all right, well, it'll be the Eagles against one of those teams.
That's a
And the
great
Eagles
point.
are going to be huge, heavily favored, but now both of those guys are a couple plays away from being in the Super Bowl.
Imagine if it's Tom Brady trying to get redemption from Super Bowl 52 in Philly. Oh my Lord, that'd be so hilarious.
On a sunny Saturday at the Link.
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
not the Link anymore, is it? What is it?
No, I don't think so, but it doesn't matter. It's close enough. So what? That can't be right. Dark World says no team has ever made the Super Bowl after losing to Kirk Cousins during the regular season. I believe you because you always come up with these insane stats, but I just feel like.
So who lost to Kirk Cousins this year that applies to?
I do not know. I'm not going back and look. Mac Jones lost to Kirk Cousins, so he can't win the Super Bowl.
Mac Jones is not going to the Super Bowl.
But
Mike White lost to them, so not going to the Super Bowl.
Out.
Matt Ryan.
All right, so all right. So who do you got in the AFC? We got right now I have you for Seattle, Tampa, and Minnesota in the NFC.
Yeah.
We got Chargers, Jags.
Oh, Josh Allen lost to Kirk Cousins. That's why they were saying that. That's why.
Let's go. Hopefully that's true.
Didn't Minnesota sweep the AFC East?
Did they? They may have. Or did they lose to Miami?
I think they beat Miami. I don't remember them losing that one.
Miami, Bills, and the Giants all lost to Cousins. Yep. Okay. Ooh, but the Cowboys beat them. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see. A possible Minnesota-Dallas rematch would be interesting, given how much of a blowout that first game was.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why this is why I want Seattle to win, because I want all the stuff. San Fran winning is fun but boring. Then it's like, all right, San Fran's gonna end up hosting Minnesota, and I think San Fran's gonna kill them.
Oh yeah.
And it just sets up the San Fran Philly NFC Championship, which is fun, but that also feels like if he doesn't blow up at home, that's the game where he blows up in the NFC Championship. And
right. Agreed.
If Kirk Cousins goes, he's going to do the same thing. So
also, Thad is asking about Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. It's an intriguing prospect. Something though we're not going to talk about today. We just don't have enough time. Can
I offer one comment on this?
Yes, do it.
Aaron Rodgers' contract is like almost untradeable. I think he's Green Bay or retiring. I don't think he can go anywhere.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's going to be Derek Carr, I bet.
Okay. All right. All right. So AFC. Oh, first of all, wait a second. Hold on.
Do we need your NFC picks?
Yes. So I have San Fran as I made publicly known. I can't pick the Giants. I can't do it. I have to go Minnesota because the Giants they just don't have any talent. Like I like the Giants a lot. They just don't have any talent. And then I feel like Tampa kind of has to win, but I got this like Tampa just sucks. They're just not a good team. They're not. And so they
Yeah.
have Brady. So I feel like Brady wins because he's Brady. But Tampa just isn't good. They're just
I feel
not
like
a
we're
good
all.
team.
I feel like the whole world is collectively just assuming Tom Brady is going to win, and Dallas looked awful against Washington, and
Right.
we're all
Yeah.
talking ourselves into this, and it's like
So
I don't
I'm
feel
going
great about the
I'm
pick.
going Dallas. I'm going Dallas. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it at all. But I'm going Dallas because I feel like it makes too much sense for Brady to win, right? Like Brady has,
Yeah,
and it's like I feel like all year long, right? All year
yeah.
long, it's oh the Bucks they're coming, they're coming, they're gonna do it, they're coming, and it's like they just don't. And
No, this
so
team.
so we'll see.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and yes, Dark Blue Gold, you're right. Now that I picked them, Dallas is probably gonna lose. You're right. I am the biggest mush
yeah.
on the planet, which is why I don't put
And
it.
Dark Blue Gold does point out that all of these wild card matchups are repeats of regular season matchups.
Yeah, it's
So like
interesting.
the Niners swept the Seahawks. Tampa beat Dallas in week 1, although I think those were very different teams
Oh yeah,
back at that point.
yeah,
And what's the Vikings did beat the Giants by 3 points at home, kind of at the end of the season.
yeah.
If I remember correctly, that was the Minnesota's whiteout game. They wore the all white uniforms for it and
I think you're
put
right.
the white end zones out, which
Yeah,
I
it was
honestly didn't love, but
no, no.
not
All
for
right,
Minnesota.
Chargers, Jacksonville. What do you got?
I got the Chargers. I don't. I watched what Jacksonville just did against the Titans of all teams and
Yeah,
didn't feel great. Although the same exact argument applies to the Chargers going against the Broncos, so I don't feel good about either one of these teams right now. I like the quarterbacks. I think the coaches are fine, and the rest is it's like a whole bunch of mediocre.
yep. I hate Brandon Staley. Hate him. I will always pick against the Chargers when Brandon Staley is the coach. So that's it. I'm going Jacksonville. They might lose. They certainly might lose. I can certainly see it happening, but I'm going with Jacksonville. All right,
Okay.
Miami Buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, do I even have to ask about Miami Buffalo? Like, is there
No.
anyone in the world picking Miami in this game?
What's the spread? What's the spread on it?
Not high enough is the spread. No,
Yeah.
The spread is
This might
13
be.
and a half.
It's not gonna be Georgia TCU, but
It might be
I
close.
think it'll be. Yeah. Miami's not a good team right now. I don't know how they kept it close earlier this season either.
The spread on his Lando Lakes.
Yeah.
That's good. Well
Somehow
done, sir.
Miami split with Buffalo this season. That
I
first
know.
game they won too was a real weird game. Buffalo
was.
outplayed them the entire way. It just got really unlucky. So
Yeah. And then the last one is, I mean, you're not picking Baltimore without Lamar, are you?
no.
I mean, how could you?
I think it's
right?
gonna be Anthony Brown starting that game, who I just had to look up before this to make sure I was
Jesus.
getting the name right. But that's just
No.
this is the other game where I will say, because it's a divisional matchup and because like John Harbaugh is a better coach than Zach Taylor,
Right.
this might be closer than we think. And like the Bengals I don't think are as good as that roster says they should be.
No, the spread's 9.5.
The Bengals played the Patriots with the Patriots only had short corners with the guys that they had, and they put up how many points that end up being?
Yeah, it was not good.
20
something.
Yeah.
It was
And they threw a
23,
pick
I think.
six. And there was a pick six in there. Like
Yeah.
it's not a great offensive output, and they've gotten offensive lineman hurt since then.
The funny thing for me is that I don't think the Ravens have a particularly good defense. I mean, I know they have they traded for what's his name, Roquan Smith, who's been good for them, but like I don't think they have a particularly good defense. So like I worry about that, but then it's like, yeah, but they don't. I don't know.
That's Burrow's
so
2 worst
perplexed
games
by
of the
that.
year. I think basically all of the bad games in his career have come against Baltimore.
Right.
They kind of had his number. So this
Yeah.
is if it was Lamar playing, I'm picking Baltimore.
I
just
agree.
because of all of this, and I think it's a bad matchup. I think this ends up. I'm going to take Cincy, but whatever that spread is, I would take Baltimore on the spread.
I mean 9.5. I don't. At the very least, I could see a backdoor
within a
cover.
possession.
At the very least, I could see a backdoor cover by Baltimore. So, anyways, that's what we got. That's our totally right and not completely wrong picks for the weekend. Hopefully, I'm hoping to get listen, if Buffalo and Cincy can't pull it off, like Jesus Christ, dude. So,
And I
anyways,
feel we need a Buffalo Cincy game.
agreed.
Although the fact that it's not Cincinnati is since he kind of got screwed. Since he did the right thing and kind of got screwed on that.
Yeah, but did they though? Because the Bill, you don't think the Bills would have won that game? I
Since
don't
he
know.
was up, Bengals
Oh,
went down and scored
yeah,
on the first drive with ease.
But I mean, come on.
I think the Bengals are pretty good.
Yeah, I think the Bills are pretty good too. So that's the hard part is that like it's early in the first quarter. Now, if it was the fourth quarter and they were up,
Yeah.
now I can see it. But it's like it's hard to say. And if anything, the Bills are the one that gave up the most because they could be the number one seed not playing this weekend. Whereas the Bengals couldn't be. So
yeah.
That's
no real winners there. We should take the time here to say DeMar Hamlin is back at home, I believe now, fully discharged, which is amazing awesome to see.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
So
I do wonder if he's going to end up at this game. I don't know where his health is at for that, but
he certainly might. And let me tell you something, brother. If he does, it is going to be absolutely nuts there in Baltimore, in Buffalo. So
yeah, they should win that one. I think it's go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's one of those where like I almost would wait for the second round instead of the first round. You're gonna smoke the Dolphins anyways. It doesn't really matter. Divisional round, he comes out. Oh my God, the place will go ballistic. That'd be cool.
I also think if they play the Bengals there in the second round, that does end up happening, which would happen if they both win. That'd be a good moment for him to come out. And you probably see if he can go visit the Bengals locker room and talk to some of those guys. And I think that'd be good for the nerves and the jitters for both teams. And,
yep, good point. Good point.
There'd be a lot. That would be a very emotional game.
Oh yeah.
And you saw now where the AFC Championship would be too if it's Buffalo and KC, right?
Yeah, in Georgia, right?
Atlanta. Yeah, which I've been to that stadium. It's a nice stadium, very nice stadium.
I haven't been there, but it looks really cool. So
yeah, I'd recommend that. It's one of the cooler ones that I've had the pleasure of going to, and I'm a sucker for any like good like light shows during the game, or like I love watching like what they do on the video boards, and the stuff they did in there was really cool. I went for the Thursday night Pats game last year. And it was nice, really cool.
That's cool.
Also, on that, there was a ton of Pats fans there, and obviously Pats Falcons. My dad wore his 328 scoreboard shirt, and on the way out, like multiple people stopped him and asked if they could get a picture with him.
Oh my Lord.
So he has a picture with somebody in front of like the big metal Falcon in front of the stadium wearing that. That's
incredible. That is incredible. Yeah, it's one of those, it's one of those things. We'll try to go to one every year. I think this upcoming year, depending on the timing, it's Dallas, it's Denver, it's Pittsburgh. That's probably my top three is Dallas, Denver, and Pittsburgh. They might be in LA again this year, and that could be a possibility as well. It's just such a long flight to get out there. But
they play the Chargers. They play the Chargers at home.
Oh, they do play the Chargers at home. You're right. So I don't know what I was thinking. I also thought they played Indy and Indy, but they play Indy at home. So
Indy at home, Pittsburgh's on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't remember the other teams, but I know those are my top three. It's Dallas, Denver, and Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure if it'll happen or not. It's got to depend on timing and everything. But
they play in Vegas again. That's another one.
That's it. I got no interest in that, but you never know. So, all right, let's get into this week in sports history. I have a good one for this week. It's a little personal spin on it as well. So that's what we got. All right.
Sure. Yeah.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right, so I'm going to go first. I will go with January 10th, 2015 in Foxborough. The New England Patriots come back from a 14-point deficit twice to beat the Baltimore Ravens 35-31. Now, everyone remembers this game. People talk about it's one of the best games ever played at Gillette Stadium. And I was there for a half and then left at halftime. And it was my dad. I don't think my dad's watching tonight, but I call it my Phil Esposito game. And I'll explain that in a minute. But what happened is that I went. My wife wasn't feeling well when I went. I knew she wasn't feeling well. My two kids at the time both weren't feeling well as well. I went to the game anyways. I'm like, I'm going. It's playoffs. What am I going to do? I get a call 2 minutes before halftime, I'm going to be sick. You got to go home and take care of the kids. So my oldest daughter was 4. My youngest daughter was 2. Not even 2. Not even 4 and 2. They were like, almost 4 and almost 2. And so I left. I left at halftime, went home, got a text. On the way home, I got a text. That's it. Game over. Because when the Ravens had scored. So I shut my phone off, did dinner, did bedtime, got them to bed, and then watched the game afterwards. I ended up watching the game in my room with my wife, trying to hold in the screams while watching the game. And it's one of those that I was like, God, I can't believe I missed that game. And so I call it my Phil Esposito game because my dad, when I was a baby, my dad had tickets to the Phil Esposito game in Boston when they retired his number. And he took me to the bank before that, and I threw up all over him in the bank. And so he was like, well,
goodness.
I guess I'm not going. So he stayed home and took care of me instead of going to the Phil Esposito game. So that Ravens game is my Phil Esposito game. And listen, honestly, for those of you that are parents out there, I think you can relate. I'd make the same decision 100 times if I had to make it 100 times over again. I make it 100 times. It is what it is, and obviously I would have loved to have been in the stands that night, and it was, to see that double pass would have been incredible, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story right there. And you got to see the first half.
I did.
You got to see some stuff.
Nothing really
You got
good.
to see the first half of the comeback. They tied it up.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah. Yeah. My on this day is also a playoff game, and also was one I was in attendance for. January 13th, 2019, the last playoff win at Gillette Stadium. Tom Brady's last playoff win at Gillette Stadium. Pats crushed the Chargers in that one, and my story on this is I had never been to a Patriots playoff game before, and it was always it was a bucket list thing for me to go. I knew Brady was getting older, and I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going to a game. I've been on the season ticket wait list for a while, so I could get like the face value seats with the pre-sale. And the second that came out, I was on it, and I was like, I'm just gonna spend the minimum. I'm gonna get into the building, and I pull up the thing, and basically all of the seats are gone when I had opened it up, and the only seats that were available were in the end zone, right near where you sit. One of some of the more expensive ones that are out there. I still remember how much I paid for that ticket. And my dad and I were gonna go, and I told him, I was like, I think there's only single seats available. And he was like, just do it, go for it. So that was the day I moved. It was the day I moved back into college for my second semester too. If that makes you feel real old,
sure does. Yep.
Yeah. But so drove up early in the morning, moved all the stuff into my apartment, which wasn't a ton. It was an on-campus apartment. So I just dropped my bags off, and then drove up from Providence to Gillette Stadium.
I love it.
And got there barely. I got in like right as the flyover happened. Barely got into the stadium on time because the line was so long on the outside. And then that game was over in like the first quarter and a half.
Yes,
and I first stood there freezing for the next 2 hours.
It was worth it though, wasn't it? It was worth it.
Yeah,
that experience.
That was a great game too. That was like it was fun. The energy was pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't know who I was a single ticket there with a whole bunch of season ticket holders. So I just made friends with everybody around me. So I don't remember any of the names of the people I met, but if anybody remembers that day and it was there, like everybody I met was so nice that day. That was a great time.
The end zone's a good place to sit. A lot of good people sit in the end zone.
I'll say in general, going to sporting events alone is more fun than you think if you're a fan of one of the teams, because they're like, you have pre-made friends right there.
Yeah.
Like, you go and talk to anybody.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that's one of those things, right? And you start like, you start shooting the breeze with them, and you're like, oh, this play, and then you high-fiving guys, and you talk. It's great. It's fun. So
I love it.
It's really good. So also, Dark Blue Gold's got one January 12th, 1969, Super Bowl III. Joe Namath wins it for the AFL, and yes, the Jets as well. Yes.
And just a reminder here, that Super Bowl happened before we went to the moon. So the Jets have not done anything since we went to the moon.
So, and of course, that is arguably the most important Super Bowl win because it caused kind of spurned the merger of the two leagues, which happened the next season before the 1970 season. So,
one of the most important games in NFL sport. You could argue sporting history with what the NFL has done at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So So, anyways, all right, that's what we got. That's what we got. It's the officially the off season. We're going to be doing a ton of draft talk. We're going to be having some fun on here. We're going to be, going back and forth. And so, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Team Crazy Matt, thanks for staying up this whole time. Appreciate you. And Dark
We
Gold, I know
appreciate
it's the same thing. You guys are lunatics staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning to
Insane.
watch us.
Well, you're
appreciate
Pats
that.
fans. We already knew they're lunatics.
That's a good point. That's a great point. But anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. And it's the off season, but again, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna stay here with you guys, and we'll have some fun this off season. All right. Take care, everyone.